All right, we are live. All right, welcome everyone to Data Analytics for Business Office Hours. It's Tuesday, September 5th, and this is a career-oriented office hours, and we are here with Tim Walters, who is both a professor and the proprietor of his own marketing consulting company. And we're going to talk to Tim just about his career trajectory, lessons learned, and advice that he has for analysts at all stages of their careers. So I guess, Tim, in your own words, to start off with, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. I got involved with analytics, I guess, all the way back when I was an undergraduate. I was going to the University of Missouri and got a degree in public administration, but I was very interested in politics. And so back then, there were two computer languages, Fortran and COBOL, and I wound up taking COBOL as one of the classes, and I put into punch cards, which is what we used back then, previous election returns, and took them to a mechanical sorter and sorted them and did all kinds of things like that. And sent the results to someone who was kind of my mentor, who was the mayor of Independence, Missouri, which is a fairly decent-sized city. And he decided to run for Congress. And so afterwards, I worked on his congressional campaign. And unfortunately, he lost. And so I had to go find a real job, which at that point, they had changed the campaign laws and things like that. So it didn't seem like a career pursuing that was the best way to go. So I wound up getting a really nice job as a dock foreman for a truck line, and did that for a couple of years. But it was nice in regard to pay, but it wasn't very intellectually challenging. So then I decided to go back to school and got an M.B.A. in decision sciences from the Wharton School, and came out and went back into the trucking business. Worked for a company. I wound up running the marketing and finance departments of the company, and it was a fairly decent sized transportation company. And I did that for 12 years. Consulted or worked a lot with our CEO, vice presidents, and things like that. Did a lot of analytics. One of the key things that I did was I built a model that estimated the profitability of each shipment that we had. And so doing it at such a micro level, then we were able to aggregate it into customers and different business segments, customer segments, if you will. And so I did that for 12 years. And then after that, I left and went to the local phone company, and I was marketing the hot technology of the early 1990s, which was facsimile services. Right. And so people were sending faxes back and forth, and one of our key products was something called Never Busy Fax, because people were getting so many faxes that they couldn't keep up with it. So we would store the fax until they were able to receive a fax on their machine. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then the company decided to eliminate that division basically and absorb it into the overall company. And so I left and started my own company, which wound up being a consulting company. At first, I developed some databases and thought that it would be more of a database company, but that didn't work out as well. So I went the consulting route and have been doing that for 22 years.
All right. Awesome. That takes a lot of temerity to start your own company. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of where you were in terms of risk tolerance and what your thinking process was in terms of going out on your own and starting a consulting company?
Right. I had a great benefit that a lot of people don't have, and that is when the company decided to eliminate our division, I had a nice payout from them. So I had a nice cushion, which I understand a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have, but that's what I was able to take that. And then after about 3 months, I was back basically working for a different subsidiary of the company as a consultant, and making about twice what I had made before when I was an employee. So everything worked out really well. But there were a lot of ups and downs because that lasted for about a year, and then the second year was much more trying in terms of trying to get additional business and things like that. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster when you start your own company. But like I say, I had the benefit of having some capital basically that I could use to do it.
Absolutely. And so in terms of clients, I mean, obviously you've had a long career in a couple different industries, and you're also academically affiliated. And I'd imagine that a lot of the business that you get is repeat business. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of sourcing clients and sort of improving, or not improving, but raising eminence and word of mouth marketing for your own firm?
Sure. So as far as clients go, one of the things that I wish I would have done more before I started my own business was networking, because I was usually pretty, narrowly focused on doing my job, and we had kids and things like that. So I was not as good at networking as I should have been. So I would encourage people, if they're considering starting their own business, to try to network as much as you can while you're employed, and then see what happens with that. But I was lucky in some ways. One person that I had worked with went to lots of different companies and hired me at basically all of the stops that he's made where he could do so. And then, quite honestly, I also do a lot of subcontracting. And so I do a lot of subcontracting. I look at DICE and other job boards like that, and develop contacts through that as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then I've also do a lot of email marketing and things like that. I developed some products that didn't necessarily take off very well, but a couple of them I kind of stumbled upon other people who purchased them, who then hired me to do more consulting work than just do the products. So they paid off in that regard.
Okay. Cool. So how would you say that, obviously you've been doing this for a while, and, since 1994, the world's changed a lot. Obviously the internet became sort of the preeminent force in probably business and in terms of information transfer. What efforts have you taken, and what are your tactics for, I guess, keeping up to date with different industries, and how like analytical challenges change in different industries that you're consulting for?
I would say mostly I've been self-taught to a large extent. I do specialize to some extent in a software called SAS,
Yep.
which was a big statistics package, and now it's morphed into other things as well. And as part of that, I've been a alliance partner with them, and so I've been able to do continual training with them, which has exposed me to new things that they have in their suite as well. And then I try to keep up with things. I listen a lot to Sirius XM business radio powered by the Wharton School, and try to keep up with some of the things through that while I'm working. And a lot of it is just, trying to learn new things as you go along.
Okay. Cool. And so you mentioned SAS. For folks watching, SAS is a proprietary data analysis program and language, and it's I guess for broad background. And Tim, you can tell me if your experience with this has been any different. But I'm actually I was a SAS programmer for a long time, and my experience has been that it's proprietary, and it's language both for manipulating data and doing all the data munging, merging, sorting, grouping by, et cetera, as well as all the statistical analyses. SAS has been around for a long time, and it seems to have a real firm hold on government contracts. A lot of government regulatory agencies will want data in a SAS data set, where they work with SAS directly. The Census Bureau, I know, does. Um, I guess over the past 20, 30 years, other languages have grown in popularity, and I'm thinking of Python and R. And those are two languages that I get asked about a lot, and which are talked about a lot in the tech world. Can you tell us a little bit about your exposure to those and any perspectives on the rise of open source languages?
Yes, I haven't done as much with those as I would like. I'm still primarily a SaaS person,
Mhm.
and I would just add that SaaS also is strong in certain industries like pharmaceuticals, clinical trials, things like that.
Mhm.
They're very embedded in that industry,
Yep.
and with a lot of large organizations as well. I
Mhm.
believe that banking is their biggest segment.
Okay.
So some of it depends on what you're interested in doing. If you're interested in working in those industries, SaaS certainly has a foothold in those.
Mhm.
And then also there is a free university edition if anybody's interested in playing around with it
Mhm.
that has a lot of the same functionality as base SaaS,
Mhm.
but it's a free copy that you can get.
Mhm.
As far as R goes, I know it's a growing thing, and I've done a little bit of work basically interfacing SAS to R and also just running R independently.
Mhm.
And I haven't done very much with Python at all.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, great. In terms of, I guess, learning new quantitative skills, to what extent has your work required you to, I guess, expand, specifically quantitative techniques versus just sort of, I guess, growing how efficiently you're applying techniques that are well known and understood by, I guess, yourself and others.
Well, when you talk about quantitative techniques, things such as logistic regression were not taught when I was in school because it took too much uh, uh, computer memory and things. So, there's been a lot since I was in school. A lot of things that have changed, and so I've had to learn, those things. Although logistic regression is, uh, you know, related to linear regression quite closely, but slightly different. I've also learned a lot more about time series forecasting, which I think is a key skill that people should try to get some exposure to at least,
Mhm.
because that seems to occur in a lot of industries where you have to do time series forecasts.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things. Another thing that I do also that's kind of related to analytics, but I also did a lot of secondary market research.
Mhm.
And so I've developed a little bit of expertise in government databases and things like that. And so one of the things I do a lot is bring in outside data into analytics. And I have a couple of examples of where I've used weather data to enhance models and things like that. So I don't think that, I think that people need to be willing to do that in order to develop better predictions.
Okay. Cool. That's great. And this is publicly available data, obviously, that you're able to grab off of an API or the web.
Yes, yes, it's publicly available data. So, for instance, with the weather data, I have a couple of examples. One was I was forecasting demand for bank ATM usage, and we found that, and this was particularly Hurricane Sandy and things like that. Hurricanes are in the news right now, but that had a big impact on ATM usage.
Yep.
Another one was I did some work for a company that rented construction equipment,
Mhm.
and they had noted that that they thought that there might be some relation to weather in their business, and I'm not sure if it was exactly because of just different operations or not, but it seemed like that we did this analysis of what their good locations were compared to their bad locations, kind
Mhm.
of, and where there was a lot of hailstorms, they tended to have good locations. So our hypothesis is that with the hailstorms, there was always a lot of repairs required that would require construction equipment rental and thing. And so those are my two weather examples.
Okay. Outstanding. Cool. Cool. I guess, and one more question, I guess, along the lines of tools and sort of the work where the rubber meets the road. I would imagine that the incorporating weather data requires a fair bit of data manipulation, merging, sorting, rearranging, and the like. Do you do all the coding for doing the rearranging of data, or do you have analysts who are writing the code and doing that work for you now?
No, I do all of it still, and so we haven't really talked about Excel, but I've done a lot of work also with Excel and Excel macros, a lot of functions, customized functions with Excel, and
Okay.
things like that. So that's Excel's really good for when you have less than a million rows of data
Hmm.
to manipulate the data, and it's easy to do VLOOKUPs and
Hmm.
index and match and things like that to add data, add this outside data to your data sets and
Okay.
workbooks.
Great, great. Yeah, the data analytics for business course does include some material on using Excel for that sort of data munging type work. Um, cool, cool. So I wanted to ask also a bit about, so when you're doing as a consultant interfacing with clients, can you tell us a little bit about scoping out an engagement? And the reason I ask about this is because in my experience with a lot of business analysts, there really is a lot of sort of translation and communication across professional gaps that occurs in terms of setting expectations, setting timelines, and helping your audience understand the nature of the work, how difficult or easy it is, why it's important to do something one way and not another, and just understanding uncertainty in results. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you scope out an engagement and set expectations with a client?
So a lot of mine are actually more or less. We want you to come in and work for X number of months, and
Okay.
so get as much information out of that as we can
Hmm.
while you're here. So a lot of it is what you might call staff augmentation work,
Okay.
where it's almost like I'm a member of the staff
Hmm.
and doing things that are assigned to me as they come up. So not so, I'd say that's the bulk of what I do now. I have done more, particularly when I was doing more secondary market research. That
Hmm.
was more of a fixed project where there was just a project to do, and it had to be done by a certain time. And so, in terms of setting the expectations, I mean, it's just I've I've never had too many problems. I haven't really worked too much with contracts per se. I've usually done more of a proposal that's more or less an outline in terms of what the objectives are that the customer wants to accomplish.
Okay.
And then this is the data sources that we'll use in order to accomplish that.
Hmm.
Um, Try to talk about a little bit about how we expect the data to be and things like that, because um, a lot of the analytics, there's probably 80% of your time is really spent on the data, and 20% is doing the real analytics number crunching. But getting the data right is usually a big part of the project. So you have to try to say this is how we expect the data to be and everything in order to produce the results that you want.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Excellent. Um, let's see. I guess jumping to additionally with corporate work and staff augmentation, uh, you may or may not be involved in hiring and staffing decisions now with companies. Are you, to any extent, do you advise on hiring and team building?
Not very often. No.
Cool, cool. When you were working in that capacity where you're managing teams, can you tell us a little bit about what you look for in a business analyst? Regardless of discipline, who might be coming to work for you? What are the qualities? What are the backgrounds that you keep an eye out for?
Well, I think first of all, you have to be curious. So it's not something that you can just come in and say, here's what we're doing and everything, and not really be curious about what you're doing. So I think that there's always that trying to assess, okay, does somebody really want to dig into the data, and are they curious about the results and things like that? So I think that's a big part of it. Some of it, a little bit, is probably interpersonal skills as well. Are they able to talk, present, and all of that? And then some of it also would be technical skills in terms of, if when I was involved more with SaaS, did they have SaaS skills or things like that? What types of technical skills can they bring to the table? What have they done in the past? So those would be the primary things.
Okay, cool. So moving on, you are on the adjunct faculty, is it, at the University of Denver. Can you tell us a little bit, share a little bit about your experience joining the faculty, teaching, and I guess a little bit about what you see in today's M.B.A. students, if that's who you're teaching?
I've taught principally in university college type programs, so normally working adults, and I've taught 10 different classes or so over the course of 20 years. And I got into it kind of in a technology education, and then switched a little bit more to leadership. So how I got into it was I was just interested in sharing knowledge, and also learning some from the students as well, who keep me apprised of some of the more recent things. Like I hear there's something called Facebook. No, I actually use Facebook, but some of the other things that people of my age are not as familiar with. So I always find that that's interesting to get their perspectives on that. And as far as teaching goes, just I try to bring out the best in what the student is looking for. Students have lots of different expectations, particularly when you're in a classroom environment. Some people are there because it's a required class, and they just want to basically get it. And others are there to learn more about it, learn more about the subject and everything. So there's always when we talk about customer segmentation, there's lots of student segmentation too in these classes, particularly when you're in a classroom environment.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I understand. Definitely. Cool. I guess at this point we've got 5 minutes. We haven't had any students join, but that's okay because this is being recorded, and we're going to post this, and it'll be a resource for everybody to take a look at. I guess any parting thoughts on going into a career in data analytics for business? And I guess when you went into it, did you expect that your career would take sort of the turn that it has, and being able to be in business for yourself successfully for so long?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I really had a plan to get into data analytics. I was more of a marketer after I got my M.B.A., and I was a little upset with how long it would take IT to do projects. And so I kind of did it because I didn't want to wait for the information. And so I had done some, I had learned some in school and everything. So I figured, okay, well, I might as well apply this. And these are some marketing issues that we have, and I want to try to answer them through data instead of just taking a guess at it. And so I kind of got into it through that route, if you will. So it wasn't necessarily a willful decision, I guess. But I'm glad that I did. I like the work. I kind of like it, and I'm not exactly sure why sometimes, but I think that one thing that I like is that you actually kind of see a result. Like if you run a program, you actually find out if it worked or not.
Yep.
And a lot of jobs, you don't necessarily find that out, at least not that instantaneously. So if you're doing a marketing campaign, you may buy TV ads and things like that, and run them, and then you may not get the results for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then have to go in and change things after that. So I like the immediacy of the results that you get in doing programming and analytics work.
Yeah.
And as far as parting thoughts, I mean, I would just encourage people to be curious, to be willing to learn new things, because as your career goes on, there will be more and more things that come up. It wasn't that long ago we didn't have email, and so people probably a lot of people don't realize that, but we used to actually do more on the phone and in person. We had we had people, they were called secretaries back then. They kind of morphed into administrative assistants, and they would be the people who would take your phone calls and all of that. So I've seen, lots of changes in my career, and I'm sure that there will be more and more changes for the people that are coming in now. And you just look at all the new technologies. I mean, social media marketing didn't exist probably 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not exactly sure how far you would say it went back, but
yeah, no, we were hearing about it as if it were the bleeding edge when I was in business school back in 2011.
Yeah. So there are all those things. Lots of new technologies that are great. They're fun to work with. We didn't, cell phones were new 20 years ago or so. So just try to keep an open mind and be willing to learn new things and keep curious about things. And like I said, and I would also encourage people to network as much as they can in order to get other perspectives, if nothing else, but also to be able to have people to call upon if you need to make a career change, or want to start your own business or something like that.
Okay, outstanding. Yeah, this is great to have that reinforced, and yeah, we're really grateful for the opportunity to ask you about your career and all of your successes. So we'll sign off now. I'm gonna stop